Hello everybody, welcome back. This is Kevin McMahon with Bear Creek Honey, and you're watching my adventures in beekeeping. It's November 28th. It's currently 20 degrees outside Fahrenheit. Nice sunny day. Some of the bees have actually taken to coming out and flying around, believe it or not, 20 degrees. So this is unique. It got down to 0 last night. It is exactly 20 degrees, 19 degrees actually Fahrenheit today, or right at at this moment, and you just saw that bee going out and actually just flying off. I don't know where the hell it went. It's a little cold for that, but it's a sunny day. 0 degrees this morning when I woke up. There's still frost on the roofs, and I've just found that funny. But the Reflectix seems to be doing its job in keeping the hives at a decent temperature. If you remember my last episode, we put this Reflectix on, and all it really does is reflects the heat that the bees are generating themselves back into the hive, so they don't lose as much heat as it is. And the sun beating doesn't really warm it up like black tar paper does. It's kind of an experiment that I'm doing this year. Other beekeepers have done it, especially up in Canada. Commercial beekeepers have done it, and so I'm giving it a try and seeing how it works out. So far so good. Very, very easy to work with, this stuff. A little pricey, so I'm going to have to be careful when I remove the staples so I can reuse it for next spring. But today, what I'm going to go over with you is some of the mistakes, problems that I had in my the second year of beekeeping in 2018. As I got a little more hives and more equipment, it required a lot more time. I made. Obviously, I'm trying some new things with these double 4/4 nukes, double 2/2 nukes. So I'm trying new things, and I just wanted to go over with you some of the things that worked, or what didn't work, and whatnot. Let's see here. To start the year, obviously, last year I lost all my hives in the winter, so I went and bought. I had to go and buy new hives. I think some nukes came right around the beginning of May that I picked up, and right away one of them didn't come with a queen, or the queen had died right away. So I attempted to use and if you remember, in the winter I had built these two-frame mini mating nukes based on Barnyard Bee down in Georgia design, and good design, everything. Little too cold for that at that time. The nights got a little too cold to put one frame of bees in to those two-frame nukes, and my early trials with that were not a success. I actually split one of my nukes, my 4-frame nukes, into what I tried to get, I think 3 2-framers out of it, and none of them took. None of them created a queen. Number one, there's no drones out for them to create a queen cell, get it out, get it mated. I mean, it was sort of a disaster waiting to happen. So that was a mistake I made, just trying to do splits too early. What I should have just done is gone and ordered a queen from somewhere and brought it in and put it in. And actually, eventually that's what I did. I bought a queen, installed it. That queen did not take. So I had to buy another queen, and I installed it, and that one finally did take. And actually what I had to do, when I put the queen in, but she came with drones, or with workers in the queen cage, they ended up killing her for whatever reason right away. So this is my second attempt. What I did was I got all the workers out of the queen cage, then just stuck her in the queen, back into the hive, and then they accepted her right away, and then I was able to release her in a day or two, and then it flourished and went okay. So couple things that I learned. I'll never, when I buy queens, I will always remove the workers from those queen cages first before putting them into the hive and letting them chew out, because I'll be honest with you, 50% of the time they end up killing her, but 100% of the time they accepted her when there was no workers in with them. Don't know why. Can't answer that question for you. I'm not experienced enough to answer that question for you. This is just what worked for me. So that was one of the things that I noticed. The second one is, like I said, I built these 2-frame mini mating nukes. For up here, I'm up here in Wisconsin, central Wisconsin. It's cold. It's still cold at nights in May, especially May 1st through probably Memorial Weekend. It can get down pretty dang cold, and those 2-frame nukes just are not warm enough to keep the brood, because there's just not enough bees in a 2-frame nuke right away to keep the brood warm enough for them to produce a queen. So what I'm going to do is take my 2-frame mini mating nukes, and I'm going to position them side by side and connect them together, so there's actually 4 frames with a divider in the middle, just so I can salvage what I got. Last year, if you remember, later on in the year, I ended up building, I took a 5-frame nuke, and I put a divider in the middle, and that seemed to work out really well for me. One of the, and I'll show you that in a second here. Actually, I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to bring over one, and I just want to show you what exactly I'm talking about. Okay, so this is my double 2-frame mini mating nuke that I had built, and I'll tell you, it works. I'm gonna have to maybe work on this a little bit, the design anyways. For the mini mating nukes, as you can see, I have an entrance here in the front, and then I have an entrance for the other one in the back. And the whole reason for that is I don't need, because these are mating nukes, so it doesn't come with a queen. It's for them to raise their own queen. And so when the queen goes out on its mating flight and comes back, I don't want them to confuse and go into the wrong hole. So that's why they're not side by side. One of the issues that I notice with these is that, as beekeepers, we always try to pitch our hives a little bit to keep water draining out one way or the other. In this way, if you pitch it to one way, if you have a leaky, obviously I've got the feeder holes here for the feeding jars. If the feeder leaks and it's dripping down, and it will collect down at the bottom. And I found some of my queens actually drowned, and bees drowned, because it was, it's tipped out this way for this one, or it, with these, because the entrance is here, I didn't even have it tipped. It's just, it was a little uneven on one way or the other. But anyways, it drains to one side or the other, and all the moisture just kind of sits there and doesn't dissipate. So either I'm going to have to cut a little vent hole in and call it a drain hole, and put some screening over it, so that any liquid that comes in, even if these leak for water, for during rainstorm, heavy rainstorms, you can get water in there. I've noticed that too. the water can actually get out of there, because that's the #1 enemy. I find that too often, and I'm going to have to do something about that. Now, you know, it's not so bad in these because these are temporary. This doesn't, you know, 30 days, I'm going to be transferring these into 4 or 5 frame nukes. So um, it's not going to be several months of, you know, damp, moist conditions where it's going to kill the hive. So that's one of the issues. Another issue with this is these. I might have to come up with a different solution for these. I don't know. It works here for this one. In the 4 framers, these tend to be sort of a pain in the ass a little bit, especially when we get to the 4/4s. When you're working the bees, this becomes an issue. So I really like to use just that Reflectix or a duck cloth type top cover instead of these as the top cover. On my 1 4/4 nuke that I had last year, working the bees was very difficult. You know, you do this, you pick it up, and you know, you tip it like this, and you're picking it up, and all of a sudden you've got a gap right here, and bees come pouring out of this one, and you know, God forbid the queen should come out and go into this one or something like that. But with cloth, you could just pick it up and roll it over, and you just work this side and then do the same thing. It's not, you know, you're not accidentally, because you know, when you're working bees, these things bump so easily, and then you get a gap, you know, right there. So I'm not real positive on that. Not to mention, on my 4/4s, I noticed sometimes I'd have gaps right here, and bees were coming in and robbing them out in the gaps, because this is, you know, as much as I try to get it as level as possible, you might get a little bit of propolis built up or something like that, and the bees can get in, and they did that one year, and they robbed a couple of my sides out, and then I was screwed. The one hive, actually, I'll show you. I'll just turn around here. It's over there in the distance. That's a 4/4 in the distance there behind my dog. It only has bees on one side. By the time I discovered that they had robbed out and the queen had disappeared from the other side, it's too late in the year, and there was honestly, there was not a lot I could do about it. So it actually only has bees on one side of that 4/4. The queen, I had bought a Sasquatch queen, which cost me, you know, $50. She lasted 3 or 4 weeks, and by the time I realized that she was gone, it's too late in the year. I think I picked her up mid-August, and by the time I found out that she was gone, you know, I can't go buy another queen or anything like it. It was just a disaster. Anyways, that's kind of what I wanted to go over you with. Leaving these a little too long was another mistake. What I tried to do was, as these were building up, and the queens were, you know, the queen hatched, she started laying, which was great, and so I'd pull out a frame and I'd try to start another one and let them build another queen in here, and that was probably just a fool's errand right there. What I just should have done was transfer these into 4 frames, let this hive become what it needed to become, and then if I wanted to make more splits, take them from the larger hives and put more bees in to help the situation. Let's see. Yeah, the 4/4 nukes. One of the mistakes that I made with the 4/4 nukes was I wanted to get honey out of the 4/4. That was one of the things you could put honey supers on over and the 2 hives would actually work together. But once I start putting supers on, the last thing you want to do is start pulling off supers and start working on just see if how your hive is doing. Um, it becomes a very, very big pain in the ass and very, very, very time consuming. So I will never do that again. What happened last year, I had a 4/4 hive, I put honey supers on it, and they were starting to create honey like mad. And I was like, fantastic, this is working out great. And I had put 3 or 4 supers on, and I was gonna get 200 pounds out of that easy from that hive. All of a sudden, and I can't remember if it was a drought that we ran into, 3 weeks of drought or 3 weeks of just solid rain. I think it was drought. And there was no nectar coming in. And then they started using their stores. So what I ended up having was 3 or 4, I think I had 4 honey supers on, and they started using the honey, started consuming the honey, and each one had 10 frames of half-filled honey, so I can't extract any of it. When I started pulling off supers, I think I ended up with 1 super that was actually filled with honey, and the rest, you're sitting there when you're trying to buckle up for winter, you're trying to figure out what to do because you don't want all those supers on there. So you pull all the honey off and you set them on the side. You hope the bees clean them up, which they did, but to one of the hives was to that detriment. I had a honey super that was, had probably 6 frames, but they were only half filled with each frame was half filled with honey, and none of them were capped yet. So what do you do with that? Because you're trying to reduce them down to, I was trying to get them down to 1 10 frame deep. So I pulled the honey super off and I just set the super on its side in front of the hive, thinking the bees will just consume it, bring it back to the hive, and great. And you know what the bees did? Unfortunate part about it was bees from other hives took that honey, and that hive actually ended up starving out. And that was my foolish error on my part, allowing them to starve out like that. Because I didn't get back to that hive for a couple weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. When I went in there, everything stunk and they had died. And I thought maybe they had a disease or a foul brood or something. I ended up burning the hive because it just stunk so bad. I was just worried that there was some sort of disease, but more and more I sort of looked into it and realized it was totally my fault for what I did. So another error on my part for this. For that. So anyway, let's go to the next thing. Equipment. I bought a bee suit, a couple of them actually last year or 2 years ago, and they each lasted me a year. They were cheap, and I kept getting bees in my bee suit, and that and they get in there, and man, I panic when I get bees inside my bee suit, and I try to take them off, and then I end up getting stung, and it just sucks. So for this year, I'm going to go for a little bit better bee suit. I haven't figured out. I've got a $40 credit from Man Lake, so I'm going to apply that towards a new good bee suit. I had 2 pairs of nice bee gloves, and I really liked the bee gloves, but I left them in the garage, and they had propolis on them, and the mice chewed all the propolis off the leather and chewed holes through all the gloves, so they became worthless. So I need new gloves there. So that's kind of like a funny. Okay, so another thing that went wrong for me last year was my first attempt at grafting. I had researched everything I needed to research. I had bought everything I needed to buy, and so I attempted to grow my own queens through grafting. And I built equipment for it. I had it all prepared, and it ended up being an absolutely complete failure. 100% I didn't get a single queen cell. They didn't even crawl on the queen cell. I don't know, my grafting, it took me, you know, I've seen people, they can graft 30 queen cells in 15 minutes. It took me a little over 2 hours to do like 20 queen cells. I couldn't get them up on. I mean, it was a big pain. Finally, I started getting a little into the groove. I don't know if I used the wrong age. What I thought was the right age. I don't know if I damaged them as I was pulling them out. I don't know what I did. I was putting my pen through all the cells. It was so difficult to extract those larvae and place them in there. It was very, very, so like I said, 3 hours it took me. Another mistake I made was I had I dumped bees into my box for just queen rearing, and there just wasn't enough bees. When I picked it up after 2 days to see if they had started any queen cells, there wasn't a bee, not one bee on my queen cells, not one. They were all in a corner in a ball, and they were apparently trying to keep warm or whatever the heck it was. Regardless, there wasn't anywhere near as many bees as I needed there to be. So that was a big fat, and I never tried it again because that was so time consuming, and it took so much resource. You actually, I mean, I was trying to grow, get these other hives built up, and when you start stealing bees from a hive, they ain't gonna build up like you hoped. So that was another mistake. So I'm gonna have to sort of dedicate one of these hives as a resource hive. Possibly this hive here, which is a 3-high 5-frame nuke, which is right now loaded with bees. It's done really, really well, and so that's going to be for splits next year, and it's also going to be, I think, my resource hive for attempting to grow my own queens. But I'm not going to do that till later in the year. I was trying to get it done. Oh, I can't even remember. I think I also tried to do that a little too early in the year. I think it was just too cold out, number one. Number two, you need drones. You need lots of drones. If you're going to do this, you need a lot of drones in the areas to get queens mated and whatnot. So attempting to do that too early, especially up here in the north, is peeing against the wind. You're just not, you're not helping yourself out at all. You're not doing a whole lot, because they don't start growing drones right off the bat in the springtime. It takes them a while. Maybe after the end of May, they'll start producing a lot more drone comb for you, and then you'll get more success for your mated queens. Buying queens. I bought so many queens last year, and so many of them, like I said, it took me a while to figure out that I had to take all the workers out before they'd be accepted. That was one of the errors, and then I lost so many queens last year for unknown reasons. I'd have a healthy queen, the hive would be laying, and then I'd go in and there's no queen. It's just queen's gone. And then they tried to make their own, and it didn't work out. And then you're sitting there trying to figure out what the heck is going on. I remember a couple of my hives. I'd sit there and go, "Oh, okay, there's comb in there, I'm like, great. They're making queen cells." Well, what it ended up being was workers were laying, and then the workers were creating queen cells. I mean, I had one queen cell that was no kidding. It was that big. I thought, oh my God, this is the queen of queens. And actually what it was they had tried to turn one of their drones into a queen. And now obviously that doesn't work. And at a certain point in time, they discovered that, hey, that's a drone in there, and they tore it apart. And that was it for that little hive. Um, I did not know that when laying workers will try to turn one of uh, their drones eggs into a queen. I did not know that they would do that, but that fooled me a couple of times last year, and I'll never make that mistake again. Um, in one hive, I actually had a queen running around the hive, and the entire hive was filled with uh, drones, um, unfertilized eggs. They and they had to go in and start tearing out. I mean, I was like, how could there be a mated queen in there? And it was filled with comb. It was filled with brood, cap brood, and then you know, and they created, and they made it all into drones, and then they just started tearing it apart because these were all laying worker. You know, the queen apparently wasn't laying; she was just a queen. I figured they'd kill her by then, but she had never laid a single egg apparently, and so anyways, the hive looked horrible, horrible, horrible. I ended up combining that hive actually in here, and with a queen right hive, and that hive ended up exploding and doing really, really well. So that ended up being a good experiment at the end, that I can combine hives with laying workers with a queen right hive. That was one of the good things that happened. Honey last year, my honey production, I thought I was going to get 200 pounds out of just that one hive, not to mention all my other ones. I was on the verge of maybe getting 500-600 pounds of honey. I ended up at the end getting 150 pounds, which was a major disappointment to me, but I also realized that I really wasn't ready I didn't know what to do with the honey that I had. I mean, getting honey is great and it's fantastic, but all of a sudden I have 150 bottles of honey, and I only got so many friends in the family. You know, each one wants a bottle and it lasts them a year. So what do you do with all this honey? Fortunate for me, I patronize a local cafe, and the woman that owns it, she actually took some of my honey last year, and she couldn't wait for me to have some honey. And then she just said, you want to put some honey out here? And I said, sure. I sell it to her for $5 a bottle, and she sells it for $6.50. So she gets to make a little, I get to make a little. Obviously, I'm not making I didn't make a ton of freaking money. You know, I bought 8 freaking hives last year at over 100 and I don't even know, $140 a piece. So I didn't even make my money back out of that. But at least I was able to get rid of it. I also had a butcher that I buy my cows from each year. I buy a quarter cow, and I just asked her, I said, you want to sell some honey? You know, I got some honey. And she's like, sure, we'll give it a shot. And so she took a couple bottles. Then she called me up. She said, I sold them. She's like, you want to bring some more? And then she called again. She's like, you know what, let's try some more. So she, you know, this time she ordered a dozen. And so, you know, getting with people like that in your community that you know, I obviously shop at both places. I eat at one, shop at the other. So I've developed a little bit of a relationship with these people. They're not my best friends by any stretch of the imagination, but that's what I got to do to help get rid of my honey. I couldn't imagine what I'd do if I had 600 pounds of honey. I was not prepared for what I didn't even think about that far ahead. Or like, what the hell am I going to do with 600 pounds of honey? So that's something you should probably think about, is what are you going to end up doing? What is your goal next year? If I have enough and I'm doing this right, hopefully I'm going to be doing splits and things like that, and by the end of or the beginning of June, somewhere around thereabouts, I should have quite a few nukes going, and I'm going to sell some of my nukes. If I can sell them for $120 a piece, so be it. and start recouping some of my money, because you can make I'm finding out obviously that I bought 8 of them last year, that you can make a lot more money on nukes than you can do with honey. But I do not I have a full-time job, obviously. uh, I do not want to be a full-time beekeeper. This is I want this to be my hobby, and although I don't mind working, and I like piddling around in the wintertime building boxes and things like that. Uh, I don't want to get too big. Number one, I don't have the storage for all these boxes that I'm building. I don't know what the heck to do with them half the time in the winter. I finally found a spot for everything that I have, but the mice want to chew on the wax and stuff like that, which is a big pain in the ass trying to find some space for all this stuff. But I also want this to be a hobby that I'm going to enjoy and not dread that it's like, damn, I just got done with work and now I got to go work bees, all these bees, and sweat my ass off. And I mean, it's physical work to work all these hives. So keeping my apiary manageable, I just want roughly a dozen hives out at my farm. That's what I want. And not all 10 frame nukes, or 10 frame hives, some nukes. And one of the issues I ran into, it got very, very cold here very, very quickly in October, and some of my hives were not quite up to weight. So I made a decision, and I put not frame feeders, but top hive feeders on 5 of my nukes. I think I have 5 top frame feeders, and I filled it up with 2-to-1 sugar water, and but it got cold, and I didn't know what the bees would do, if they would be able to take it down in time or not. I even had a 5 frame feeder, top feeder, that I put on too, but I wanted to get them some feed on them, and I just couldn't put mason jars. It was just too cold for mason jars to be exposed. So that's what I ended up doing. But I went away for about 3 weeks. I had a hunting trip. I went up north. I came back, and I'm like, okay, it's time to check on take these frame feeders off. If they didn't get all their food left, so be it. I pulled them off, bone dry. Bees had it had warmed up a couple of days. The bees used that, and they sucked it all down. Fantastic. The biggest issue was I was popping those frame feeders off, and all the bees were up into the crack. They were all packed in at the top of my hives. Even though it was 20 degrees outside, they were all on the top of my hives. Hives were within weight, but all my bees were on the top. So it's 20 degrees out, and I didn't have a bee suit. My bee suit was destroyed, actually. And I was thinking that the bees weren't going to fly around, and boy, was that a mistake. I started popping those. I had bees everywhere, man, and it was crazy. And so I literally, I'm trying to bang these bees off. They're flying everywhere. It was a pain in the ass. It was stupid of me. So what I ended up doing was just leaving those frame feeders on the hives for the winter. There was nothing that I could do. They were, like I said, they were up in the crevices, packed in, and they were content. They had sucked down all the sugar, but they were still up there. And in the winter, the bees were flying around, and there was no way they were coming back. So I was losing bees, and that was just stupid of me. I should have probably waited till a warmer day, and maybe they'd be down a little bit, and I could have cracked them and had a bee suit on. And anyways, I just ended up leaving them on. So a lot of mistakes I made this year. A lot of mistakes. I'll be right back. About 8 production hives, and then of course, 4 or 5 hives here at the house. That's really all I want. I had 24 at my peak last year, and that was just, for me, more than I could really handle. Driving back out and forth to the thing, that takes gas. It costs money. Every time you drive out there, gallon of gas you're using. So you know that's $3 every time you're driving out there. And man, if you drive out there three times a week, you know, to do a few hives here, a few hives there, a few hives there, you're driving out there 3 times a week. Well, that adds up in cost. Not to mention, in the springtime, you gotta get your pollen supplement. You gotta get your mite control costs, and your um, costs for well, there's costs for everything. So you know the gas going out, like I said, and your sugar water. You know you're paying for all the sugar to feed them in the spring. Then you got to feed them back in the fall, and you got to somehow recoup that money or try to recoup that money. Anyways, that's my little rant as far as the things that didn't go right for me this year. What did go, like I said, what did go right is I got a new logo created, so that went well. I got a couple of people to help me sell my honey, so that went really well. A few of them, like I said, a few of my hives really did well, but I felt to myself that I made more mistakes uh, than I had successes. My one success, I captured a swarm. So that was a success that I captured the swarm. It swarmed out of that box right behind me there, up into the tree right there. I still have the hive right behind me, and it's doing really well. That I captured that queen, but what I ended up should have done, I did take two splits out of there, and I created 2 splits, and I actually got 2 hives out of 3 hives out of it. But the main hive ended up not being able to create its queen. So I ended up having all these frames that ended up running out of brood, and I was like, gosh dang it. So I ended up combining one of my nukes back with that hive, and so that hive, I guess you could say, I lost a hive. So I was up 3, down 1. So I was net 3 because I actually got the hive. So I was actually up 3. What I should have done was taken that. When they swarmed and went up, and I caught the queen. Queen is there, so I know the queen is there. What I should have done is taken that hive, 10 frames, and split it out, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and had them try to create all their queens, and then I would have, you know, even if I had 60%, I'd have 6 new hives out of it. So that's what I really should have done. And next time I will learn from my mistake. Hopefully next year I can do a little bit better capturing swarms. I had a swarm trap out at the farm, and the only thing I captured was what looked like a sweat bee colony. It moved in, and they created a paper nest inside the box. So that I didn't even capture a swarm over there. I just captured sweat bees. I think they were sweat bees. They could have been wasps, but just or mason bees. They could have been mason bees too, but it just was a small paper nest in the bottom of the box. Usually a wasp will, their beehives would be attached to the lid, but this one was actually built on the bottom, and it was nice and round like a football. So again, that was another failure that I had, was trying to capture, you know, anybody's swarm, because there's a beekeeper just down from the farm. I noticed he's got a dozen or so hives too. He's a commercial beekeeper because he ships his hives off in the winter time. No, actually he's got more than a dozen. Looks like he's got about 25 hives. So anyways, that's my rant. Maybe we'll do some projects in the fall here. I'm gonna scrap the idea of the 2-frame mini mating nukes, and I'm gonna go with converting 5-frame nukes into 2-frame mini mating nukes. Number one, because they're not as tippy. not tippy at all. The little 2-frame mini mating nukes are very, very tippy. So I'm going to scrap that. I'm going to take my 2-frame mini mating nukes that I've got. I'm going to end up slapping them side by side. My 4/4 nukes, instead of having the front entrance here and the other entrance in the back, I'm going to have both entrances going out there because they're both going to have queens. My 4/4s are both going to have queens, working queens. So I'm not going to have to worry about the queen going into the wrong hive. And that was the whole idea for having two separate. I'm just going to have them both go in side by side. People do it every day. Commercial beekeepers, you always see their 10-frame nukes slapped together in twos, and their entrances are side by side, and they never have too much problems. So that's going to be what I'm going to do. And I actually might take my empty 4/4 nukes and close up the back and put the entrance in the front. That way I can tip, like I said, that tipping thing to get the water to drain out the entrances, key, number one key. Rain gets in there, water gets in there, syrup gets in there, and then you find dead bees in the bottom just because they drowned in the bottom. I found dead queens in there too. Anyways, so until next time, happy beekeeping. Take care.